So, welcome to a new video. Today you join me for a review of another car. This is my 320d. This is my previous car. Currently it's for sale. I've had this car for over 5 years now. I've put on over 100,000 kilometers in this car. And before this car I had another e92. Let's just say that I know the e92 quite well actually. This car, the engine. In this car we have a 2-liter diesel. This is the 320d. You might notice that I have the twin tailpipes at the back like the 35. That's just my preference. I like the way it looks. I think the rear end with just one tailpipe doesn't look as nice as this one, but I'm not trying to look like a 35D, in case someone is thinking about that. I'm not. This car, like I said, it's got the 2-liter diesel. And first I want to talk about the engine, because a lot of people here in Europe at least, when this car was new back in 2006-7 when it first came out, this one is from 2011, so it's already an LCI version. It's a restyle version, so it's got different bumpers, lights, interior is updated as well. But when this car came out, you had a plethora of engine choices. You had the 20D like this one, you had the 30D, the 35D, and then you had all the petrol options, which, if it wasn't for the fuel consumption, I'd tell you, go for it. But there are two things here, especially in Portugal, where I live right now. Fuel prices are off the scales. Not at the moment, but when this car came out, they were off the scales. So with this engine, when it came out of the factory, since this is the LCI version, it had 184 horsepower and 317 Newton meters, which might not sound like a lot, but this car weighing around 1,500 kilos, that's plenty. I mean, you're not going to get overly excited with this car, but what you're going to get is a great compromise between economy and thrills. It doesn't have the amount of power that you may wish, but if this is what you can afford, go for it. This is quite a good option. 184 horsepower as standard. That made you go from 0 to 60 if you're living in a royal country, or 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in around 7.8 seconds, 7 point something, but I'll put it here on the screen somewhere. As of right now, I've got a race chip installed in this car, so it's got 207 horsepower, a few more torques as well, but it doesn't really change how this car performs from 0 to 60. What you do get is like the in-betweens. You get a faster response going from 80 to 140, for example, 100 to 200. That's quicker, the in-betweens. Gearbox as well. This is a lovely gearbox. This car is the MPAC, so I've got a smaller shifter. I think it's 1 centimeter shorter than the standard one. And the gear shifts, they are notchy, and I hear people complaining sometimes about being notchy, but I have no complaints about a gearbox being notchy. So what notchy to me means is that the gear just slots into place very well. There is a resistance point where it just slots. So for me, that's perfectly fine. Economy. This car, I'm getting, and I'll post here somewhere, a print screen of all the, so I record all my fuel ups, and I have a record of how much this car is, how much fuel it has been using. Right now I have an average displayed of 6 liters per 100 kilometers, which I've been driving around here having some fun. I've been doing some motorway driving as well, some B-road driving as well. And the average for this type of power, this type of car, to me, I think is almost unbeatable. You're getting a amazingly frugal car that can give you an actual thrill. When it comes to sound though, it's a diesel. There isn't much you can do. I mean, it doesn't sound any good. It really doesn't sound any good. The engine isn't, so this car has a little bit more sporty characteristics to it. So the engine, you get a little bit of engine noise in the cabin, but unfortunately it's not that much of a pleasant engine noise. Exhaust as well. I don't have one of the boxes for the exhaust. I don't remember which one. I think it's the one, yeah, the last one. So I get a little bit of a noise, but it sounds more like a vacuum to me, if I'm honest. It doesn't sound really good. So in the engine department, if you're looking for something that can give you a little bit of thrill, be frugal, you can still have fun, daily drive, go to the shops, do all that you have to do, this car can quite well be for you. About handling now, as you can probably see, I'm in a twisty road here in Portugal, and this car is, I mean, coming out of an M3, which I've been driving regularly these days, you can tell that it's softer, you can tell that it's not as precise as an M3. But this car never costed as much as an M3. This car never intended to be as much as an M3. But what you get in this car, like I said before, it's got M Sport Pack, it's got stiffer suspension, thicker roll bars, and it's lowered by 1 centimeter as well from the standard version. But you do get a car that is quite fun in the twisties. I mean, if you come here, for example, to this road, to some other canyon road, let's say that you take this car for a long journey, which this car can do. I've taken multiple long journeys on this car, 1,000 kilometers plus journeys. And then you get to your destination and there is a nice country road. Don't be mistaken, you'll be able to have a lot of fun. It's quite an amusing car actually. You can get a lot of thrills from it. The steering though, this is an electric. This is one of the first systems that BMW did of an electric steering rack, electrically assisted steering rack, and I cannot say that it's got much feel. Honestly, I don't feel much through the wheel. It doesn't communicate much, but I can tell you that it's precise. You turn the wheel and bang, it's there. You're not gonna miss precision. You're gonna miss a little bit of feel. This car came with run flats as standard, which I'm not running anymore. I've got Goodyear F1 asymmetric 3s, front and rear. The measurements are stock, but they're no longer run flats. And trust me, you get a lot more feel, you get a lot more grip, you get a lot more comfort. Since we are talking about handling, I think it's also a good time to talk about suspension and how comfortable it is. I'm running 19-inch rims, and this will never be mistaken for a Rolls-Royce. Let me just tell you that. It won't be mistaken for a Rolls-Royce. But you can, as I said, I've daily driven this car for over 5 years. I've dealt with all types of road conditions, and yes, there were times where I felt, oh my god, I want a Rolls-Royce, or I want something that's got a more pliant suspension. But for 90% of the road that I've driven, and I've driven some poor roads, this car is okay. The suspension is competent enough, yet it's dynamic as well. You're not going to be sad about this. I mean, if you want a really comfortable car, look elsewhere. This is not for you. If you want something that's dynamic and retains some sort of comfort level, it's okay. What I can tell you is that when I removed the run flats, the comfort improved significantly. Some people complain that when you remove run flats, you can feel the car gets spongier. That's true because the sidewall of the tire isn't as strong, so the tire gets a little bit more lean. The way that I was able to counteract that was by just pumping up the tire pressure a little bit. I run, if I'm not mistaken, I run 2.5 at the front and 2.7 at the rear, something like that. I run 0.3 higher than standard. Now, with the most important part, at least to me, that is the engine, drivability, dynamics, out of the way, we can now talk about everyday usability and creature comfort. This car has heated seats, it has air conditioning, it's got Harman Kardon speakers, interior lighting, dynamic xenons, it's got alarm, got a GPS as well, the professional BMW GPS, automatic headlights, automatic rain sensing wipers, parking sensors front and back. I mean, what more could you want from a car? I really don't know what else you could want. It doesn't have radar cruise control. I mean, it's a manual car, so you wouldn't even be able to get that because that doesn't really work with a manual gearbox. It also doesn't have the collision warning things that modern cars now have, because when this car came out, that wasn't really a thing, at least in this BMW. And there wasn't as an option. And in terms of practicality, you've got folding rear seats, you've got a big, actually it's quite generous, the trunk for this car. 4 seats. I mean, if you want a 5-seater, this car is not for you. You've got 4 seats, 4 individual seats, and you've got a little a division in between the rear seats. So, I mean, it's got. I wouldn't give it an A+ in practicality, if I'm honest. But you can. You're able. I've done moving in this car. I've moved houses using this car. It wasn't the most practical thing ever, but I've done moving in this car. You've got cup holders as well, one for you, one for the passenger, cup holders at the back. I mean, what more could you ask for in a car that you're going to be daily driving? I don't think you can ask for much more. The seats, these are the sport seats. They have inflatable bolsters which hold you quite nicely in place, actually. They're very good. I don't have any complaints. The only complaint, though, that I have about these seats is that they don't have lumbar support. This car didn't come with lumbar support, so it's a fault of this car. And on a longer journey, and when I say longer, I mean 300 kilometers, doesn't need to be much more than that, your back is going to start hurting, which is, I mean, it's unfortunate for a car like this. Still on the topic of usability, one of the biggest drawbacks that this car has, and it's actually not just this car, it's this type of car. When you have these long doors, when you've parked in a car park next to another car, when you're trying to get out, these doors get in the way so much. You end up looking like a baboon trying to get out. But I mean, I think it's a small price to pay, but don't be fooled. It will get annoying at some point. But I guess you'll get over it when you come and look at the car. And that's now another topic which I'm going to talk about, which is looks. As I said, this is my second E92. So if I tell you that this car isn't pretty, I would be lying. I think this car is one of the prettiest shapes that BMW did. It's got really nice proportions. It's got, especially with these 19-inch rims and the lowered suspension, it just looks the part. When the first time that I saw this car, I just fell in love with it. The first time that I saw this car being driven away from me, that was the first time I left it for service. It blew my mind, more or less. But it blew my mind. I mean, it's such a simple car, yet it's quite beautiful. People actually look at it and feel. People are drawn to this car. This interior as well, it looks amazing. I love these seats, the way they look and the color that they have. Now comes the dreaded issue with BMW, reliability. How reliable has this car been to me? Well, for the most part, this car has been quite reliable. I cannot say that it's been flawless, because that would be a lie, but it's had only, and I'm saying only, a few people might hear what I'm saying, might say that it's not just only, but considering that I've been driving this car for over 100,000 kilometers, I think it's 120,000, something like that. The things that I've had gone wrong with it are the intake manifold, as well as the EGR, that's the exhaust gas recirculation valve thingamajig. They went kaput. I had to replace both of them, both those parts. The intake manifold, it was just a lot of carbon buildup. I think it's somewhat common. I purchased the parts outside of BMW. I had an independent mechanic do the job, and I paid around, for everything, parts included, 900, 1,000 euros, more or less. It's a big chunk of money, yes, but I felt that it was worth it, obviously. The car was just bogging down. That's a symptom that I was having. I was just driving normally, and then the car would bog down and then start driving normally again. It just wouldn't be okay. Second thing I've had gone wrong with this car. This car has comfort access. I forgot to mention that. So you just put your hand on the door handles and the car unlocks. Same for the trunk. This door handle, it stopped working. This happened, I don't know, 50,000 kilometers ago, something like that, and I haven't bothered to fix it yet, so it's gonna stay like that until I get tired. That's the other thing that messed up. And third, and this happened quite early into the ownership of this car, was the passenger rear view mirror. It closes, and what happened was that, well, I closed it. I closed it with the push of the button, and then it didn't open ever again. So what I ended up doing was I ordered a mirror from eBay, an OEM mirror. I tore apart the whole door and I installed it myself. It was quite easy, actually. It wasn't too much of a problem to install it. What ended up happening while I was doing that was that the mirror, so there's this very fragile ribbon cable that goes to the mirror that allows it to heat and dark when you're getting blinded from the car behind. And by mistake, I must have cut that cable, or I must have done something to that cable, so I lost that. I just had to order a new mirror. It's something cheap. I just didn't bother doing it. Other than that, this car has been actually quite flawless. It's been quite a good experience for me. So guys, that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. If you have any questions, I will try to help you as best as I can, and you can also find a lot of help online at the forums, like Beamer Post, for example. This car is still a car that many people own and many people like to own, so the community support for this car is wonderful. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!